Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to episode 13 of Buha's Block. On today's episode, we are going to be doing a breakdown of the number 7-8 play-in game between the Lakers and the New Orleans Pelicans. I went back and rewatched the game. I took a bunch of notes, and I have a series of player observations, some stats from the season series, and 5 adjustments for the Lakers and 5 adjustments for the Pelicans that I think both teams could and should implement for Tuesday's matchup. Because it is a single game and these two teams just played each other, I view this more through the lens of adjustments and what each team could do better versus big picture questions, series questions, and that's how I've typically approached playoff series. That's how I will approach the Lakers first round series, assuming that they make the playoffs. But for this one, it's more looking back at this last matchup, looking back through the season series trends, and trying to decipher what both sides will try to do with their season, not quite on the line, but with a playoff spot on the line, and the uncertainty of if you lose, you are now in a single elimination game against either the Kings or the Warriors, where anything could happen. And as the Lakers have seen in recent weeks with Anthony Davis and his eye and his back, LeBron and the flu, all it takes is one thing not going your way, and you could potentially lose a game that you expected to win. So the Lakers don't want to be in that position, even with the Denver Nuggets awaiting them if they win this game. All right, so quickly, some Lakers-specific observations. AD was dominant defensively. The Lakers did a really good job of funneling Zion and Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum into AD. The Pelicans were inexplicably running pick and rolls at AD and having Larry Nance Jr. or Jonas Valanciunas screen for McCollum, Ingram, Zion. And bringing AD into the action is never a good idea, as both the Golden State Warriors and Memphis Grizzlies learned last postseason. You have to be aware of where he's at all times on the floor. And I'm starting to get into an adjustment, so I'm not going to delve deeper into it. But AD's defensive performance was masterful. To me, it was a Defensive Player of the Year caliber performance, and it didn't quite show up in the box score in terms of blocks and steals, but he affected at least a dozen shots from the Pelicans and really was disruptive defensively with his contests and just his presence in the paint and around the rim. And it really reminded me of the 2023 playoffs. And if the Lakers are getting that version of Anthony Davis, it's going to be really difficult to score against them, even if the perimeter defense isn't quite up to the level it was last postseason. As I said yesterday in my postgame reaction from the game, LeBron was just surgical in this one. He was precisely picking the right spots to exploit the Pelicans defense, when to attack off the dribble, when to find cutters, when to find shooters, how to manipulate the defense with pick and rolls and weak side actions. And it was just a spectacular LeBron performance on both ends. I thought defensively, his on-ball defense against Zion, not just that though, his help defense, his rotations, boxing out. LeBron was very active and engaged defensively. And in addition to AD, obviously, he was the key to LA having such an excellent defensive outing. Austin Reeves did a really solid job sticking with CJ McCollum. CJ hit a bunch of tough shots against Austin, and when the Pelicans were targeting D'Lo and getting him switched on to him, he's going to do that. That's just part of what CJ does. But for the most part, I thought Austin did a good job with his rear view contests, with funneling CJ to AD and just tracking him around screens and moving off the ball. Again, D'Lo bounced back with an improved shooting performance. He hit several big threes in the third quarter when the Lakers offense was starting to stagnate a bit. They were out of rhythm, out of flow, and D'Lo bailed them out several times with big threes. Defensively, he had some good moments, playing passing lanes, getting deflections. The Pelicans did successfully target him a bit, and that is one of my sole concerns entering the 7-8 game, but the Lakers can find ways to counter that, which I will touch on in my adjustments. Rui had immaculate timing with his baseline cuts, particularly from the corners. The Pelicans were having their low man rotate over in pick and rolls, and every time LeBron got downhill, Rui was getting behind the defense for cuts, for dunks, for layups. This was a smart tactic from LA's offense, and a credit to the coaching staff, to Rui, and to LeBron and LA's other perimeter ball handlers for finding Rui. Taurean Prince, of all people, exposed Zion defensively. He took him off the dribble several times and either scored or got high percentage looks at the rim, but that allowed AD to get offensive rebounds and it made Zion work defensively. So another shrewd tactic from LA in terms of exploiting Zion's lack of lateral quickness, lack of foot speed in those scenarios. He's very athletic offensively. It just doesn't translate defensively for whatever reason. And LA took advantage of that. I thought Jackson Hayes had a really impactful 12 minutes, especially on the defensive end. He was contesting without fouling. This is a personal matchup for him. This is a team that essentially gave up on him in the Pelicans and had no interest in keeping him around, re-signing him. So Jackson had a little extra oomph for this one. And I thought he was locked in defensively, was generally in the right spots, and did a good job just protecting the rim and keeping the defense afloat when AD was off the floor. Finally, the last player-specific observation. Spencer Dinwiddie had a sneaky impact on this game late in the third quarter. Again, as I mentioned, the Lakers offense in the third was pretty stagnant. They were settling for a lot of jumpers, turning the ball over. New Orleans was starting to get back into the game a bit, and Spencer Dinwiddie had a nice drive for a runner, also hit a catch-and-shoot three, and just those couple baskets gave the Lakers enough breathing room to eventually seal the game early in the fourth quarter. Spencer continues to provide solid defense, but those types of offensive sequences are what the Lakers are going to need from him in a potential Denver series or a potential Oklahoma City series. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but when he is open, when he is getting his opportunities, they need him to score and at least be a threat. Okay, now the season series breakdown between the Lakers and the Pelicans. LA won the season series 3-1. All three of their wins were blowouts. They won by 44, 20, and 16 for an average margin of victory of 26.7. That is pretty one-sided. The Pelicans did blow them out late in December, so that is of note, and that game was also in New Orleans. But the last two matchups have gone LA's way decisively. LA has a 124.1 offensive rating against the Pelicans, a 110.3 defensive rating against the Pelicans, and a 13.7 net rating against the Pelicans this season. So you flip those numbers, and those are the Pelicans' offensive and defensive numbers. So offensively, they've been at 110.3 points per 100 possessions. Defensively, they've been at 124.1 points per 100 possessions. And net rating-wise, they are a minus 13.7 points per 100 possessions. Basically, LA has dominated the season series. LA has a 60.9% effective field goal percentage against the Pelicans. Very, very good. That is an elite mark, which is just field goal percentage with three-pointers weighted properly. The Pelicans have a 53.5 effective field goal percentage, which is below average for them looking at their season numbers. Rebound percentage, LA has won the rebounding battle. They have a 50.9 rebound percentage. And because that is out of 100, the Pelicans in turn have a 49.1 rebound percent against the Lakers. So LA's won that by about 2%. Assist percentage, LA is at 66.1%. Pelicans are at 65.7%. So when both teams are scoring, they are sharing the ball at a high level. Turnover percentage has been a key difference in this matchup, though. The Lakers are at 12.5%. The Pelicans are at 14%. So that 1.5% makes a difference in transition, in the possession battle. The Pelicans are turning the ball over more than they normally do against the Lakers, and the Lakers are turning the ball over less than they normally do against the Pelicans. So that has been an X factor in this matchup. The Pelicans have really struggled with the Lakers' length and just driving into the paint. LA has multiple guys in there, and they're trying to throw these kick-out passes that get deflected and intercepted, and LA has largely been unbothered by the Pelicans' perimeter length. Finally, with the key season series categories, the teams are playing at a 101.63 pace. That would have been the fourth highest pace on the season, and it favors the Lakers, who are fourth in pace, compared to the Pelicans, who are just 16th in pace. So these games have actually been played at a slightly faster level than the Lakers' average game this season. Lakers' pace was at 101.38. So another category that has gone the Lakers' way. So again, to recap, LA has been better offensively and better defensively. They've shot the ball better. They've rebounded the ball better. They've passed the ball better. They've taken care of the ball better, and they played faster. So essentially every key category, and there are others, but most of the crucial categories that paint the picture of how these matchups have gone have been in LA's favor. And that is why I expect them to win on Tuesday. I think we'd have to take another situation where AD leaves early, or the Lakers have like 20 plus turnovers, LeBron or AD's in foul trouble, like something dramatic like that to really give the Pelicans a shot. Or maybe they hit 20 plus threes and they just have an insane shooting night. Outside of one of those outlier events happening, I think the Lakers should be the favorites in this one. And I think they're going to win, earn the number 7 seed, and face Denver in round 1. Okay, so with some observations and takeaways from the game, as well as the season series breakdown, it is time to get into the adjustments for both sides. We are going to start with the Lakers, of course. And to quickly preface this, I actually don't think the Lakers have much to adjust with. I think they played close to a perfect game against the Pelicans on Sunday. Like, yes, shot selection, turnovers, there's always little things you can tweak. But for the most part, I thought the defensive game plan was sound. LeBron and AD were featured heavily, as they should be, in comparison to D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves. So the pecking order made sense. The starters played more. LA maintained size for longer, playing exclusively Rui and LeBron at the 4 in this game. So there's not much to really tweak from LA's side. It's just continuing to do the things you did on Sunday and do them at an even better level, or at least a similar level. But I am going to suggest 5 minor adjustments, though, again, it's not anything drastic or dramatic the way that I think it has to be on New Orleans' side. So adjustment number 1 for the Lakers is to spam the LeBron and AD pick and roll even more. I don't know the points per possession off the pick and roll, but the Lakers essentially got whatever they wanted when they ran LeBron AD pick and rolls against Zion and Jonas Valanciunas, exploiting both players' inability to contain at the point of attack, their lack of foot speed. And then when Larry Nance Jr. was involved in the action, just his more ground-bound technical nature. He's not an aerial rim protector, can't really break up AD lobs. All he can do is shove him in the back and nearly injure him. But that aside, like the Lakers were able to generally get whatever they wanted against the Pelicans' big men. And if New Orleans switched Herb Jones or Brandon Ingram or Trey Murphy III into the action and had one of those guys on LeBron, all of a sudden AD had a mismatch and he could post up or take those guys off the dribble or just go to the offensive glass, where he was very effective in this game. So I think LA could go to it even more. I think there were some stretches, especially in the third quarter, when the offense started to stagnate, that they started to go away from it a bit. So I would say even more of it, because I think it's going to be LA's bread and butter in a potential Denver series and just moving forward throughout the postseason. Adjustment number 2 is related, and that's target Zion, target Jonas Valanciunas, play him off the floor again, and target CJ McCollum. I think the Lakers can bring whoever CJ McCollum is defending into the action more, have that guy screen for LeBron, have that guy screen for Austin or D'Lo, whoever CJ isn't guarding, and just take him off the dribble or shoot over him. But I think LA could be even more ruthless than they were in this last game. And part of it might just be they didn't want to show all their cards in that game. But in this game, you do. And I think it's attacking, like New Orleans typically has at least 2 guys you can attack on the floor in most instances. And LA did a good job of attacking those guys. I think they could do an even better job on Tuesday. Adjustment number 3 is respect Herb Jones as a shooter. Herb is shooting 41.8% on threes this season, taking just 3.6 per game. But it kind of reminds me of the way Memphis and some other teams have defended Rui Hachimura, where they just look at the rest of the guys on the floor and they're like, this is the guy we will live with taking open threes. But there's a difference between taking wide open threes and it basically being shooting practice versus helping off and recovering in at least semi-contests and just making those shots a little bit more difficult. So Herb hit 4 of his 7 threes against the Lakers, and they were helping off 1 pass away. They were helping off too aggressively, like when it was D'Lo or Rui. Those guys don't necessarily have the foot speed to close out and make those shots difficult. And I know you have to live with some things defensively, and LA has typically chosen to let shooters that they feel comfortable taking shots shoot, and that's the one, like they'd rather sell out, protect the paint, and give up those types of shots. But I don't think Herb Jones, as a near 42% 3-point shooter, is the guy to do that off. And after a couple of early threes, the Pelicans just won away from it. I'm not really sure why, but I think Herb is a guy that LA needs to respect a bit more. And like Dyson Daniels, Jose Alvarado, like there are other guys I think you can be a little bit more selective with. But Herb is not one. Trey Murphy is definitely not one. So I think LA needs to shore that up and just be more attentive to where Herb is and maybe not help off as much. Adjustment number 4 is just a tighter rotation. LA once again went with 9 guys, but I think it could be even 8 in the play-in game. I think Austin and Rui should be playing more. Austin was just under 29 minutes. Rui was around 34. I think that could be slightly higher, 35, 36, maybe even 37 for Rui. And Austin should be 34 plus on a nightly basis moving forward. He was not in foul trouble. It was not like the Memphis game. So I'm not quite sure if LA was just trying to save him because he played in all 82 games and now they're going to play him a little bit more. But Austin should not be playing 29 minutes in a game unless he's in foul trouble or unless he's injured. And if it's not one of those two things, Austin needs to, again, be a 34, 35 plus minute a night guy. And if you're going to ask, who do you take the minutes from? I think it's Gabe. And I think it's Torian. I think Torian at 20. And now, to be fair, Torian had a solid game. But if I had to pick a couple of weaker spots in the rotation, I think Spencer is giving LA a level of perimeter defense and off the bench ball handling that they need. He's basically the third guard. So I don't think you reduce his minutes. If anything, I think at 13, he was a little low. But I look at reducing Gabe's minutes potentially entirely or just a little bit, and reducing Torian's minutes probably to more like the 14 to 16 range instead of 20. And you do those two things, keep Jackson like 8 to 12 minutes, maybe play him a little bit more next to AD. And I think the rotation makes a lot more sense. And then adjustment number 5 is maintaining a sense of urgency. Anthony Davis spoke about this after the game. The Lakers kind of took their foot off the pedal in the second half, particularly in that third quarter. And as I've mentioned several times now, like the offense was getting stagnant. The Lakers weren't running as many actions as they did in the first half. They were doing that thing that they just like roll the ball out and kill the clock. And I think that takes away from their rhythm and their flow offensively. There's certainly a human nature element to it where you're up 20 plus on the road, like you're just trying to get out of there with the win. But the Pelicans had a couple of mini runs that could have turned into bigger runs. And had that happened, it would have been because the Lakers eased up a bit in the second half. So LA has to maintain that sense of urgency. They got bailed out several times in the third, with just some ridiculous shot making from D'Lo, from Austin. And if that does not translate into the play-in game and they're not making as many difficult shots and it's a closer game, that's something that could ultimately decide the game. So I think LA has to continue running their offense, being disciplined and being engaged and active defensively. And they do that. Again, I think they should win. As for the Pelicans, I think they need to make some wholesale changes to the starting lineup and the rotation. My first adjustment for the Pelicans is start Larry Nance Jr. over Jonas Valanciunas and play no Cody Zeller. The Lakers rotation is clear. AD typically plays the full first and third quarters. Sometimes he'll exit a little bit early for Jackson Hayes, but AD is off the floor to begin the second and fourth quarters typically. Now, LA has been going with LeBron and AD to start the floor in games that they've been more serious with, so I expect that to continue. Maybe pull AD a little bit earlier in the third, or that's kind of the pocket where he's off the floor. And if you're the Pelicans, I think you need to have Jonas Valanciunas on the floor when AD is off the floor, because that's where you can exploit Jackson Hayes in the post. His post defense is not a strength defensively, and the Lakers could attack Valanciunas in the pick and roll and get some lobs to Jackson Hayes. There's no great option defensively for the Pelicans, but I think Valanciunas would have more success going up against Jackson Hayes than against AD. And when AD's on the floor, I think it has to be Larry Nance Jr. You basically just have to mirror those minutes. And again, no Cody Zeller. Adjustment 2 for the Pelicans is play Brandon Ingram more. He was on a minutes restriction entering this game, only played 23 minutes, and that needs to be up at 35 to 38. This is technically not a single elimination game, but it kind of is because your season is on the line if you lose, with the next game being a single elimination game, though it would be at home for either New Orleans or LA. But I think at this point in the season, unless New Orleans really wants to avoid Denver, they need to get rid of that minutes restriction for Brandon Ingram. To me, he was their best offensive player in this game. Though he only had 13 points, he made 6 of his 9 shots, and most of the shots were good. He was able to take Rui and Spencer and Torian off the dribble and pull up over those guys or get to the rim. I think more BI is the way that New Orleans makes this game more competitive. He's their best scorer in this matchup. He has advantages over the Lakers perimeter guys. I thought Rui did a decent job against him, but it's not a great matchup for Rui. Ingram was able to bully him a little bit with his shoulders and just rise up over him, similar to the way Kevin Durant has been able to do that against Rui. I think for New Orleans, they need a 30 to 35 point performance from Brandon Ingram. And that partially starts with him just playing more, but they also need to run more actions for him. He scored 9 points in the final few minutes of the first quarter and scored 4 points the rest of the game. And it wasn't like the Lakers made some crazy adjustment against him. New Orleans just stopped going to him, and he only took a few more shots the rest of the way. So New Orleans needs to run more of the offense through BI, more pick and rolls, more pin downs, and more weak side action. Just get him going. And I think that's a way for them to make this game more competitive. Adjustment 3 is get Zion on the move more. And when Zion went against a set defense and was basically catching the ball at the elbow and trying to take LeBron or Rui off the dribble, the Lakers did a really good job of staying in front of him, absorbing his contact on drives, and funneling him into Anthony Davis, funneling him into help. But when the Pelicans were able to scramble the Lakers defense and get Zion on the move, get him catching the ball on the weak side, get him coming off of a screen, that is where he was able to get a step and get downhill and either finish or get a good look that was maybe contested or find a teammate for an open shot. He did have 8 assists in this game and was doing a good job playmaking. So I think the Pelicans need to stop just having him drive into bodies. He has not been successful with that approach against the Lakers. They have enough size with that Rui, LeBron-AD front line. But getting him on the weak side, getting him on the move, LA is going to struggle to contain him that way. And the Pelicans are going to need Zion to have a better offensive performance, at least from a scoring standpoint, to have a chance in this game. Adjustment 4 is related to both adjustment 2 and adjustment 3, and it's just stopped going at 80 in the pick and roll. I don't understand why New Orleans continued to do that. It did not work. It never really worked. Yes, you were drawing 80 out, but the Lakers' backline rotations, their help, their defensive engagement and activity with deflections and steals was stellar. And I think if you're New Orleans, you need to bring other guys into the action, run more guard-to-guard screens, run inverted pick and rolls where you're going at Austin or you're going at D'Lo, basically going at anyone other than Rui, LeBron, AD, and Jackson. If you could target some of those guys, target Torian, target Spencer with a Zion or with an Ingram, that's where I think New Orleans is going to start to get their offense going. But their game plan of trying to bring AD into the action just made no sense, and I'd be shocked if they continue to do that. The flip side of that is adjustment number 5, which is targeting D'Angelo Russell more in pick and rolls. And I thought when New Orleans did that, they got some pretty good looks. CJ McCollum was able to score on him in isolation, take him off the dribble. Some of the other wings, when D'Lo closed out on them, were able to get by him and get into the paint. So if there's a weak link for the Lakers with that starting group against New Orleans, it is D'Lo. Like when LeBron is defending the way he defended last game, it's not LeBron. Rui held up for the most part against Ingram and Zion. Austin did a solid job against CJ, but D'Lo is the guy to target if you're the Pelicans. They did target him a bit. I think they could have done it a little bit more and just keep bringing him into actions. And if the Lakers want to double or blitz, now you have a 4-on-3 advantage if you're the Pelicans. Of course, if the Pelicans try and do that, there are ways the Lakers can counter. Pre-switching. Let's say CJ McCollum has the ball, Austin Reeves is defending him, and Herb Jones, who's being defended by D'Lo, is coming to screen for CJ McCollum. The closest Laker defender, let's say it's Rui, who's guarding Brandon Ingram, he can pre-switch and switch onto Herb Jones, and then now he's in the action, and D'Lo switches on to Brandon Ingram. And then obviously the Pelicans are going to try and get the ball to Brandon Ingram, and then you could double him, or you could pre-switch that and have LeBron or AD rotate over. So targeting D'Lo can get the Lakers in rotation, and it can disrupt their defense, but there are ways LA can adjust. Another adjustment would be potentially going with Spencer or Gabe slightly more if it is crunch time and the Pelicans are trying to target D'Lo and they do it successfully a couple times. You can adjust with a better defensive player, though obviously there's an offensive trade-off. Though with the way the other 4 starters have played against the Pelicans, I don't know if you take that much of a hit. But as you can see, the Pelicans need to make some major adjustments. Another one I forgot to mention was just take Dyson Daniels out of the rotation. LA was not guarding him. He missed all 3 of his open threes. And I think they need to ramp up the minutes for Ingram, Murphy, and Herb Jones. So those are some of the adjustments I think both sides should make. Again, I think the Lakers played a near perfect game, as reasonably perfect as you can play a game. And again, shot selection, some of the contested off the dribble jumpers, some of the turnovers, that stuff can be cleaned up a bit. But really, it's more LeBron-AD pick and roll, targeting New Orleans' poor defenders, respecting Herb Jones as a shooter, leaning into the starters and a playoff rotation even more, and maintaining their urgency regardless of the score. And then for the Pelicans, I think it's starting Larry Nance Jr. and mirroring his minutes with AD. It's playing Brandon Ingram more and relying on him more offensively. It is finding more creative ways to get Zion on the move, especially off the weak side. It's avoiding Anthony Davis in the pick and roll, and it is targeting D'Angelo Russell more. With all that said, even if both sides make all these adjustments, some of these adjustments, or none of these adjustments, I think the Lakers are going to win this game. I think they're going to be the number 7 seed, and I think they're going to play Denver in the first round. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching and listening. For those on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and drop a comment. And like this video if you enjoyed it. For those listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice, please consider following, downloading, and leaving a 5-star review. I posted on Twitter last night that I was going to do a mailbag. I didn't get a chance to do that today because I delved so deep into this. So I'm actually going to do that tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that show tomorrow before the game. If you made it this far in the show, I appreciate you, and I will talk to you soon.